Ambassador Veltar pressed her thin fingers against the cool metal of her desk and stared at the holographic display floating before her. Red dots marked the dead systems. 12 of them now. 12 entire star systems where millions of her people had once lived, worked, and raised their young. All gone, all consumed. The Krek swarm moved like a plague across the galaxy. They ate everything organic, turning living worlds into empty husks of rock and metal, ships, stations, even the wooden furniture in children's bedrooms. Nothing escaped their hunger. The worst part was how they did it. The Kreks didn't just kill, they absorbed. Every person consumed became part of their hive mind, adding their memories and knowledge to the collective before their consciousness disappeared forever. Veltar's species, the Zephyrians, had never been warriors. Neither had their allies in the Coalition, the gentle Harath with their flower-like faces, or the scholarly Vin who spent their lives studying the stars. All three species had evolved on peaceful worlds where cooperation meant survival. They had no weapons of war, no killer instincts, no understanding of the brutal mathematics of extinction. She looked up as the door to her office slid open. General Kethamor of the Harath military walked in, his usually bright petals now wilted with exhaustion. Behind him came Scholar Prime Zixtal of the Vin, her large eyes reflecting the same despair that had haunted all their meetings for weeks. "Any word from the Galactic Council?" Veltar asked, though she already knew the answer from their expressions. Kethamor's petals drooped further. "They refuse to send aid. They say our systems are too far from the core worlds to justify the risk." The human ambassador was more direct. He called it a lost cause and suggested we evacuate to refugee camps in Centauri space. "Refugee camps," Zixtal repeated bitterly. 3 billion beings reduced to refugees because no one wants to fight a war they might lose. Veltar felt something break inside her chest. 3 billion. That was all that remained of their coalition. 3 billion souls depending on her to find a miracle when none existed. The largest military force they could gather had maybe 200 ships. The Krek swarm numbered in the thousands, and they grew stronger with every world they consumed. "What about the Altarian Empire?" she asked desperately. "The Nexus Confederation? Someone must be willing to help." "The Altarians closed their borders yesterday," Kethamor said. "They're too afraid the swarm will follow us to their space. The Confederation offered to take our historical archives and preserve our culture after we're gone." Veltar stood and walked to the window that looked out over New Zephyr, the Coalition's capital world. Below, families went about their daily lives, unaware that their government had exhausted every option. Children played in the parks, vendors sold food in the markets. Artists painted murals on the walls of buildings that might not exist in a month. "There has to be someone," she whispered. "Someone we haven't asked." Zixtal consulted her data pad. "We've contacted every major power in the galaxy. The Krek swarm has been expanding for 30 years. Everyone knows what they do. No one wants to face them." "What about the minor powers, the independent worlds?" "Most don't have the military strength to help. The ones that do are too far away." Zixtal paused, her large eyes focusing on something in her data. "There is one option we haven't explored." "What is it?" "The Deathworld species database." Zixtal's voice dropped to a whisper. "Species that evolved on worlds so dangerous that contact is restricted." Veltar felt her blood chill. Every civilized being in the galaxy knew about Deathworlds, planets so hostile that only the most savage creatures could survive there. The species that emerged from such places were considered unstable, violent, and unpredictable. There were strict protocols about contact with them. "How many Deathworld species have achieved spaceflight?" she asked. 17 confirmed. Most are isolated in their home systems, too dangerous to interact with galactic society. Zixtal's fingers moved across her pad. But there's one exception. A species called humans from a Class 12 death world designated Earth. Class 12. Veltar had never heard of a world rated that high on the danger scale. Most death worlds barely reached Class 7. What makes their world so dangerous? Zixtal read from the file. Extreme weather variations, tectonic instability, aggressive predator species, toxic plant life, disease organisms, radiation exposure, gravitational stress, atmospheric pressure variations, corrosive ocean chemistry, electromagnetic interference, multiple extinction events, and... She paused. Confirmed apex predator intelligence. Apex predator intelligence? Kethmore's petals had gone completely white. You mean they're evolved killers? According to this, humans evolved from persistence hunters. They would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their world was so dangerous that they had to become the most dangerous thing on it just to survive. Veltar sat back down heavily. Asking apex predators for help felt like inviting demons to fight demons. But what choice did they have? What do we know about their current status? They've been spacefaring for about 200 years. They have colonies in several systems near their homeworld. The Galactic Council maintains minimal contact, mostly trade agreements for rare minerals they mine from asteroids. There are warnings in their file. What kind of warnings? Zixtal's voice became even quieter. Psychological instability, tendency toward violence, unpredictable emotional responses, capability to weaponize nearly anything, disregard for conventional warfare doctrine, high tolerance for casualties, including their own. They sound terrible, Kethmore whispered. They sound desperate enough to fight the Krex, Veltar said. A terrible idea was forming in her mind. If they're truly apex predators, maybe they're the only species crazy enough to face the swarm. Veltar, no. Zixtal leaned forward. The psychological profiles suggest humans are barely contained savages. Bringing them here could be as dangerous as the Krex. Could be, but the Krex will definitely kill us all. Veltar pulled up the communication array. How do we contact them? There's a quantum relay station at the edge of their space. But Veltar, please reconsider. The cultural analysis says humans form pack bonds and respond to violence with greater violence. They might demand payment we can't afford, or worse, they might decide we're threats too. Veltar looked out the window again. A group of Harath children were drawing pictures with colored sand in the park. Their innocent laughter drifted up through the air filters. In the market, an elderly Vin was teaching a young Zephyrian how to carve traditional patterns in wood. These people trusted her to protect them. Draft a message, she said. Make it honest. Tell them exactly what's happening. Veltar, do it. Zixtal's fingers moved reluctantly across her pad. What should we offer them in return? Nothing. Both her companions stared at her. Nothing? Kethmore asked. If they're as savage as the reports say, offering payment might make them think we're trying to hire mercenaries. That could insult them. If they're pack animals like the analysis suggests, maybe they'll respond to a simple request for help. Veltar moved to the communication console and began typing. The words came slowly, each one weighted with the fate of billions. To the human species of Earth. We are the Zephyrian Coalition. We are dying. A species called the Krex Swarm is consuming our worlds. They have destroyed 12 star systems. 3 billion of our people depend on our next decision. We have asked every major power in the galaxy for help. All have refused. We know humans are considered dangerous. We know your world is classified as hostile. We know the Galactic Council warns against contact with your species. But we are out of options. She paused, thinking of the children in the park. Our children are being consumed, turned into part of a hive mind that knows no mercy, no peace, no individual thought. If there is any mercy in your species, if you understand what it means to fight for survival, please help us. We don't know what you might want in return. We don't know if we can afford your price. But we're asking anyway, because sometimes desperation is all the courage you have left. Veltar encrypted the message with their diplomatic codes and attached their star charts, military assessments, and everything they knew about the Krek swarm. Then she looked at her two closest advisors. "Are you certain about this?" Zixtal asked. "No, but I'm certain about what happens if we do nothing." She pressed the transmission key. The message shot across space at faster-than-light speed, carrying with it the hopes and fears of 3 species who had run out of time. The response came 18 hours later, just 4 short lines that appeared on every screen in the coalition. Government simultaneously. Message received. Situation understood. Ship en route. Prepare for unconventional assistance. Captain Sarah Chen, UES Retribution. Veltar stared at the message for a long time. UES Retribution. Even the name sounded dangerous, but buried in those brief words was something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. 3 days later, long-range sensors detected something approaching Coalition space. A single ship, moving fast and broadcasting human identification codes. Veltar ordered all defensive fleets to stand down and prepared to meet their saviors, or their doom. She still wasn't sure which it would be. The UES Retribution dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Zephyrian territory with all the grace of a falling asteroid. Long-range sensors had detected its approach for hours, but seeing it with their own eyes left the Coalition fleet commanders speechless. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship, watching the human vessel through the main view screen. It looked like something that had crawled out of a starship graveyard and decided to keep flying anyway. The hull was a patchwork of different metals and alloys, clearly salvaged from dozens of different ships. Weapon mounts had been welded onto surfaces never meant to carry them. Massive industrial equipment jutted from the sides like mechanical tumors. "By the 7 suns," whispered Admiral Korthek beside her. "What is that thing?" Fleet Coordinator Zixtal checked her sensors. "It's registering as a cargo vessel, a salvage ship, according to their transponder. But those energy readings..." She looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, that ship is putting out more power than our entire battle fleet." The communications array crackled to life. A voice spoke in accented but understandable galactic standard, rough and direct in a way that made Veltar's skin crawl. "Coalition fleet, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Retribution. We're here about your bug problem, requesting permission to come aboard your flagship for tactical discussion." Veltar exchanged glances with her officers. The human had called the Krek swarm a bug problem, as if a force that had consumed 12 star systems was just an inconvenience. "Permission. Granted, Captain Chen. Docking Bay 7 is prepared for your shuttle." "No shuttle needed. I'll take a transport pod." "Fair warning. My ship doesn't carry the pretty diplomatic shuttles you're probably used to." 20 minutes later, Veltar stood in the docking bay watching a small pod lock onto their docking clamps. It looked like an escape pod that someone had strapped engines to. When the airlock opened, the first thing that hit her was the smell. Oil, metal, and something else she couldn't identify. Something sharp and dangerous. Captain Sarah Chen stepped through the airlock, and Veltar immediately understood why humans were classified as apex predators. The woman was tall and lean, moving with the controlled grace of something that could explode into violence at any moment. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes were the color of winter storms. Scars marked her hands and face, not the neat surgical scars of medical procedures, but the ragged marks of someone who had survived things that should have killed her. Behind her came 2 other humans. One was a massive man, whose arms were covered in what looked like decorative scars arranged in patterns. The other was smaller, wiry, with the pale skin of someone who spent their life in space. All three wore clothes that looked functional rather than formal. Heavy boots, practical pants, shirts that could handle hard work. Ambassador Veltar? Chen's voice was direct, businesslike. Captain Sarah Chen. This is my tactical officer Marcus Webb and my chief engineer Riley Santos. We need to talk strategy. Veltar had prepared diplomatic pleasantries, formal greetings, careful protocols. But something in Chen's manner suggested the human had no patience for ceremony. Of course. We've prepared a briefing room. Good. But first I need to be clear about something. Chen's storm-colored eyes fixed on Veltar's face. You called for help from Deathworlders. That means you're going to get Deathworlder solutions. We don't fight wars the way civilized species do. We don't follow the standard rules of engagement. We don't worry about fighting fair or keeping things clean. If that's a problem, say so now. Veltar felt ice in her veins. What do you mean by not clean? I mean, we're going to do whatever it takes to stop the swarm. Things that might make your people uncomfortable, things that other species would call brutal or excessive. Chen's expression never changed. The question is whether you want to win more than you want to keep your hands clean. Admiral Korthek stepped forward. Captain Chen, we appreciate your willingness to help, but surely there are galactic conventions. Chen turned her winter storm gaze on him. Admiral, how many ships did you lose the last time you tried to fight the Kreks using galactic conventions? Korthek's silence was answer enough. In the briefing room, Veltar watched Chen study their tactical displays with the focused intensity of a natural killer. The human asked sharp questions about Krek's biology, their ship construction, their movement, patterns. Her two officers took notes on devices that looked like they'd been cobbled together from spare parts. Your intelligence is good, Chen said finally, but incomplete. You're thinking about this like a conventional war. The Kreks aren't conventional. They're a cancer. You don't negotiate with cancer. You don't fight it fairly. You cut it out completely. What are you suggesting? Veltar asked. Chen activated her own display device, projecting images that made several coalition officers gasp. The Retribution's interior looked like a nightmare of improvised weapons and jury-rigged equipment. Mining charges had been converted into ship killers. Industrial cutting tools had been modified for combat. Cargo holds had been turned into manufacturing bays for things Veltar didn't want to identify. We're a salvage ship, Chen explained. We go into dangerous places and bring back things other people can't or won't handle. Dead ships, unstable artifacts, contaminated materials. My crew consists of people who are too dangerous for regular service, but too valuable to waste. She gestured to her tactical officer. Webb's massive frame was covered in scars that told stories of violence survived. Marcus used to run with pirate fleets before he decided he wanted to kill pirates instead. He knows every dirty trick in the book because he invented half of them. Santos grinned, showing teeth that had been replaced with metal implants. Riley here got kicked out of the engineering corps for building weapons that violated about 40 different galactic treaties. Good thing this isn't technically a galactic operation. Veltar felt sick. You're criminals. Reformed criminals, Chen corrected. We work for Earth's Deep Space Operations Division. We handle problems that regular military can't touch. Pirates, who hide in asteroid fields. Rogue AI ships. Alien artifacts that drive people insane. Things that require people who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. And you think this qualifies you to fight the Kreks? Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut. Lady, we specialize in killing things that shouldn't exist. The Kreks are just another Tuesday for us. She activated another display, showing the Retribution's crew manifest. Veltar read through it with growing horror. Former pirates, disgraced military officers, asteroid miners, salvage specialists, and individuals whose job descriptions were simply listed as classified. How many of you are there? Admiral Korthek asked quietly. 43 crew members. plus whatever we can jury-rig from the local materials. Chen seemed to enjoy their shocked expressions. I know what you're thinking. How can 43 people fight a swarm that destroyed 12 star systems? The answer is that we're not going to fight them. We're going to make them wish they'd never heard of organic life. Santos pulled up technical specifications that hurt Veltar's eyes to look at. We've got mining charges that can crack small moons, industrial acid designed to eat through starship hulls, electromagnetic pulse generators that will fry any electronics within 50 kilometers, and those are just the conventional weapons. What about the unconventional ones? Veltar asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Webb spoke for the first time, his voice like grinding stone. Biological warfare, psychological operations, environmental manipulation, things that make the enemy wish they were dead long before they actually die. Chen leaned back in her chair. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to hit the Krex advance fleet when they reach the contested system. We're not going to try to outfight them or outmaneuver them. We're going to make them afraid. Fear is something the Krex don't understand, which makes it a perfect weapon against them. The Krex are a hive mind, Zixtal protested. They don't experience individual emotions like fear. No, but they experience collective trauma, pain that affects the entire network, confusion that disrupts their coordination. We're going to hurt them in ways they can't adapt to, because adapting would require them to become something they're not. Chen stood and walked to the tactical display showing the approaching Krex fleet. Fair warning, when this is over, your people are going to have questions about our methods. Some of those questions won't have comfortable answers. The Krex are going to die in ways that civilized species would call cruel. We're going to use their own biology against them. We're going to turn their greatest strength into their biggest weakness. Veltar looked at her advisors, seeing her own doubts reflected in their faces. These humans were everything the warnings had said they would be: violent, unpredictable, willing to cross lines that civilized species wouldn't even approach. But they were also the only people in the galaxy who had looked at the Krex swarm and seen a problem they could solve. Captain Chen, she said slowly, what do you need from us? Stay out of our way. Keep your fleets back unless we specifically call for them. And be prepared for the fact that when this is over, the galaxy is going to know exactly what happens when someone threatens a species under human protection. Chen's smile was cold as deep space. The Krex wanted to be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. They're about to learn what actual predators look like. As the humans prepared to leave, Webb paused at the airlock. Ambassador, one more thing. When we engage the Krex, don't try to record the battle for your archives. Some things are better left unremembered. After they left, Veltar stood in the empty briefing room, staring at the tactical displays. In 3 days, the Krex advance fleet would reach the contested system. In 3 days, she would learn whether she had found salvation or invited a different kind of doom into Coalition space. Outside the viewports, the Retribution hung in space like a mechanical predator, waiting for its prey to arrive. The Krex swarm entered the Zephyr 7 system like a plague of living ships. Hundreds of biovessels poured through the hyperspace exit point, their organic hulls pulsing with the rhythm of massive hearts. Each ship was grown rather than built, crafted from the absorbed biomass of countless conquered worlds. They moved with purpose, guided by the collective intelligence that had consumed 12 star systems. Captain Sarah Chen watched them arrive from the bridge of the UES Retribution, positioned behind a small asteroid field at the system's edge. Her crew worked quietly around her, making final preparations for something the galaxy had never seen before. Biological composition confirmed, reported Santos from the engineering station. Hull material is approximately 60% organic. Polymer, 30% mineral composite, 10% metallic infrastructure. They're basically flying creatures with metal skeletons. Perfect, Chen said. Deploy the bacterial packages. The Retribution launched what looked like mining probes, small, unremarkable devices that drifted toward the asteroid field. The Krex sensors ignored them completely. Why would a hive mind worry about industrial equipment? Webb monitored the deployment from his tactical station. Packages are in position. Bacterial cultures are stable and ready for dispersal. Chen had spent 2 days explaining to the Coalition Command why this would work. The Krex ships were living tissue. Living tissue could get sick. Earth had spent billions of years developing bacteria that could break down organic matter. The Retribution carried samples of Earth's most aggressive decomposer organisms, carefully modified to work faster and spread further than nature ever intended. "What's the dispersal method?" Admiral Korthek had asked during the briefing. "We're going to sneeze on them," Chen had replied with a straight face. Now, as the Krex fleet moved deeper into the system, Chen activated the first phase of her plan. The mining probes exploded, but instead of producing fire and shrapnel, they released clouds of microscopic organisms into space. The bacteria spread through the vacuum, designed to survive in the cold and seek out organic compounds. The Krex didn't notice anything wrong for the first hour. Their bioships continued their advance toward Zephyr 7, where Coalition evacuation ships were still loading refugees. But then the microscopic invaders found their targets. "Contact with enemy biohulls confirmed," Santos reported. "Bacterial. Colonies are establishing. Decomposition rate is exceeding projections." Chen smiled grimly. Earth bacteria didn't just eat organic matter. They multiplied while doing it. Each successful infection created millions more bacteria, spreading through the Krex ships like wildfire. The living hulls that had been the swarm's greatest advantage were becoming their weakness. The first Krex ship began showing symptoms 20 minutes later. Its hull started developing dark patches where the bacteria colonies were breaking down, the organic polymers. The ship's movement became erratic as its living tissues began to fail, but Chen wasn't finished. As the bacterial infection spread through the Krex fleet, she activated the second phase of her psychological warfare campaign. "Riley, start the audio bombardment." Santos grinned and activated an array of powerful speakers mounted on the Retribution's hull. The sound that emerged would have been impossible to hear in the vacuum of space, except that it was broadcast directly into the Krex ship's communication networks. The hive mind suddenly found itself flooded with sounds it had never encountered before. Whale songs from Earth's oceans, deep and mournful and vast. The collective consciousness tried to process the alien noises and found itself becoming confused, disoriented. The songs seemed to carry emotional weight that the hive mind couldn't understand. Then came the wolf howls, pack calls from creatures that had once been humanity's greatest rivals for dominance on Earth. The sounds triggered responses buried deep in genetic memory, primal fear of predators, panic at being hunted. The Krex had never experienced these emotions before. They didn't know how to process them. The hive mind's coordination began to break down. Ships started moving in circles, no longer following their formation patterns. Some began firing at empty space, responding to threats that existed only in their collective nightmares. But Chen saved the worst for last. "Human war songs," she ordered. The speakers erupted with the sound of human voices raised in battle cries. Ancient war chants from a dozen different cultures mixed with modern military songs and the screams of humans in combat. The sounds carried something the Krex couldn't comprehend. Individual will choosing violence, separate minds deciding to fight rather than flee. The hive mind recoiled from the concept. Individual choice was antithetical to everything the Krex represented. They were one mind in many bodies, perfect unity of purpose. But these sounds suggested creatures that chose to be violent, who found strength in their separation rather than weakness. The psychological assault had an unexpected effect. Several Krex ships began attacking each other, their shared consciousness fracturing under the strain of concepts it couldn't process. The perfect unity of the hive mind started developing. Cracks. Chen watched the chaos spread through the enemy fleet and gave the order for Phase 3. All right, people. Time to get physical. Deploy the ramming drones. The Retribution had entered the system carrying mining equipment. Massive drilling platforms designed to bore through asteroids. Chen's crew had made some modifications. The drilling platforms were now guided missiles, each one carrying enough momentum to punch through a small moon. But instead of aiming for the Krex ships directly, Chen targeted the debris fields created by the bacterial infections. As the bioships' hulls decomposed, they left behind clouds of metal and mineral compounds, the inorganic skeletons that had supported the living tissue. The ramming drones slammed into these debris clouds at tremendous speed, turning metal fragments into high-velocity projectiles. The Krex ships found themselves caught in artificial meteor storms, their remaining hull integrity shredded by pieces of their own dead vessels. "They're trying to retreat," Webb reported. "The larger ships are pulling back toward the system edge." "Let them try," Chen said. "Activate the gravity mines." The Retribution had been dropping modified mining charges throughout the system during its approach, but these weren't explosive devices. They were gravitational manipulators, designed to create small but intense gravity wells. As the fleeing Krex ships passed over them, the devices activated. The effect was devastating. Ships designed to move smoothly through space suddenly found themselves caught in gravitational whirlpools. Their organic navigation systems, already compromised by bacterial infection and psychological trauma, couldn't compensate for the sudden changes in local space-time. Krex vessels crashed into each other, their coordination completely destroyed. Some were torn apart by gravitational stress. Others spun helplessly, trapped in artificial gravity wells that prevented escape. The Coalition fleet, watching from a safe distance, could barely comprehend what they were seeing. A single human ship was systematically destroying a force that had conquered 12 star systems. But they weren't doing it through superior firepower or advanced technology. They were doing it by turning the Krex's own strengths against them. "Captain," Veltar's voice came over the communication channel. "What happens to the survivors?" Chen looked at the tactical display, where scattered Krex ships were still trying to escape the system. Most were crippled, their biohulls failing, their hive-mind connection disrupted by psychological trauma. "There won't be any survivors," she said quietly. The final phase of Chen's plan was the most brutal. The Retribution moved through the debris field like a mechanical shark, hunting down damaged Krex vessels. But instead of simply destroying them, Chen's crew boarded the ships. Webb led the boarding parties, wearing environmental suits that protected him from the bacterial infections ravaging the Krex bioships. His teams moved through the dying vessels, collecting samples, studying the enemy's technology, learning everything they could about Krex biology and psychology. It wasn't just intelligence gathering, it was a message. The few Krex ships that managed to escape would carry reports back to the main swarm. They would tell the collective consciousness that humans didn't just defeat their enemies. They studied them. They learned from them. They took apart everything that made the enemy dangerous and figured out how to use it for themselves. Santos worked frantically in the Retribution's laboratories, analyzing the captured biotechnology. "Captain, this is incredible. Their organic computing systems could revolutionize our own technology, and their biomass processing—" "Careful, Riley," Chen warned. "That technology comes with a price. Every advancement they made was paid for with the lives of entire species." But she didn't order him to stop. That was the thing about humans that made other species uncomfortable. They could feel horror at their enemies' actions while still being willing to learn from them. They could condemn the Krex for consuming entire civilizations while studying the very techniques that made such consumption possible. The battle ended 6 hours after it began. The Zephyr 7 system was littered with the debris of Krex bioships, their organic hulls reduced to floating colonies of Earth bacteria. The gravitational anomalies would take weeks to dissipate. The psychological echoes of human war songs would haunt the local space for years. Chen stood on her bridge, looking out at the destruction. Her crew worked around her, cataloging their captures, analyzing their samples, preparing reports that would change humanity's understanding of biotechnology forever. "Coalition fleet, this is Captain Chen," she broadcast. "The immediate threat has been neutralized. The system is secure." There was a long pause before Veltar responded. "Captain, what just happened here?" Chen considered her answer carefully. "We showed the Krex what happens when they threaten a species under human protection. They wanted to be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. We taught them the difference between being dangerous and being apex predators." She looked at the tactical display, where the few escaping Krex ships were limping toward the hyperspace exit point. They would carry word of this defeat back to the main swarm. They would tell the collective consciousness that humans fought wars in ways the hive mind couldn't comprehend or counter. "Fair warning, Ambassador," Chen added. "This is just the beginning. The main swarm will come looking for revenge. When they do, they'll find out that everything we just did to their advanced fleet was US being gentle. Outside the Retribution's viewports, Earth bacteria continued consuming the organic remains of Krex bioships, turning the enemy's corpses into fuel for their own reproduction. It was a perfect metaphor for human warfare. Even in death, their enemies served human purposes. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about the difference between being civilized and being safe. 3 weeks after the battle at Zephyr 7, Ambassador Veltar stood in the cargo bay of the UES Retribution and tried not to vomit. The smell was overwhelming, a mixture of chemicals, decay, and something else that made her instincts scream danger. Around her, human crew members worked with casual efficiency, processing materials that no civilized species would dare to touch. "Careful with that sample," Santos called out to a technician handling what looked like a piece of living metal. "It's still trying to network with other Krex biotech. We don't want it establishing a communication link." Veltar watched in horror as the human crew dissected pieces of Krex ships like they were performing surgery on corpses. Which, she realized, was exactly what they were doing. The humans had harvested everything: hull fragments, biocomputers, organic processors, even samples of the collective consciousness itself. "Is this legal?" she asked Captain Chen, who was examining a datapad covered in biological readings. Chen looked up with those winter storm eyes. "Define legal." "We're not technically violating any galactic treaties because this isn't officially a galactic operation. Earth's involvement here is classified as humanitarian assistance, not military action. But you're studying their technology, learning from it." "Of course we are. You don't win wars by being stupid." Chen set down her datapad and faced Veltar directly. "Every piece of Krex biotech we analyze makes us better prepared to fight them next time. Every biological sample we study teaches us more about their weaknesses. This isn't just scavenging, it's intelligence gathering." Veltar felt sick. "The Krex were a sentient species. This feels like..." "Like what? Grave robbing?" Chen's voice hardened. "Let me show you something." She led Veltar to a workstation where Webb was analyzing what looked like organic memory storage. The massive man's scarred hands moved delicately over the alien technology, extracting data with surgical precision. "Marcus, show the ambassador what we found in the neural networks." Webb activated a holographic display that made Veltar gasp. Images flooded the air around them, memories extracted from the Krex collective consciousness. She saw worlds burning, species being consumed, children being absorbed into the hive mind, billions of voices screaming as their individuality was stripped away and fed to the collective. "This is what the Krex did to 12 star systems," Chen said quietly. Every person they consumed became part of their memory banks, their experiences, their knowledge, their terror. All of it preserved forever as entertainment for the hive mind. The images continued. Veltar watched entire civilizations disappear, their cultures reduced to data points in the Krex collective. The hive mind didn't just kill, it absorbed everything, making the death of entire species into a form of psychological torture that lasted forever. They kept the memories, Webb explained, his voice emotionless. Every scream, every moment of fear. Every desperate prayer for rescue. The Krex found it amusing. Veltar turned away from the display. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you need to understand what we prevented," Chen said. "The Krex weren't just going to kill your people. They were going to make your deaths last forever. Every Zephyrian child they consumed would have spent eternity as part of their collective, experiencing the moment of consumption over and over again. But that doesn't justify what? Studying their technology, learning their weaknesses." Chen's voice rose slightly. "Ambassador, the main Krex fleet is still out there. They're going to come for revenge. And when they do, every piece of information we gather here could save millions of lives." Santos looked up from his workstation. "Captain, I've isolated the bio-neural pathways they use for collective communication. If we can synthesize a counteragent, we might be able to disrupt their hive mind completely." "Good work. What do you need?" "More samples, preferably from living subjects." Veltar stared at him. "Living subjects? We captured 3 Krex drones during the boarding actions," Chen explained. "They're being held in isolation chambers. Santos needs to study their neural activity to understand how the hive mind actually functions." "You're experimenting on prisoners?" The cargo bay went quiet. Every human in the room turned to look at Veltar, and she suddenly felt like a small prey animal surrounded by predators. "Ambassador," Chen said slowly, "let me explain something about human morality. We don't experiment on prisoners. We study captured enemies to protect our allies. The Krex drones aren't suffering. They're unconscious and isolated from their collective. But the information we gain from studying them could prevent the consumption of entire species." Webb spoke without looking up from his work. "The Krex don't take prisoners. They consume everything. Our choice is between studying 3 unconscious drones or watching the Coalition get eaten." Veltar felt the weight of moral complexity crushing down on her. Everything the humans did violated some principle of civilized warfare, but everything they violated those principles to prevent was infinitely worse. "How do you live with yourselves?" she asked quietly. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "We don't have to live with ourselves. We just have to live, and make sure other people get to live too." She gestured to a viewport that showed the debris field still floating around Zephyr 7. "Every piece of metal out there represents thousands of Krex drones that will never consume another world. Every biological sample we study brings us closer to understanding how to stop the main fleet. If that makes us monsters, then we're monsters who protect the people we care about. But the cost..." "The cost of what? Having nightmares about the things we've done? Knowing that we've crossed lines civilized species won't cross?" Chen's smile was sharp and cold. "Ambassador, the Krex have consumed 12 star systems, billions of sentient beings. They're planning to consume billions more. If the cost of stopping them is that 43 humans have to carry some moral weight, then that's a bargain." Veltar looked around the cargo bay again, seeing it with new eyes. The humans weren't celebrating their victory. They worked with grim efficiency, like doctors performing surgery on a plague victim. They didn't enjoy what they were doing, but they did it anyway because the alternative was worse. "Captain Chen," she said slowly, "what happens when the main Krex fleet arrives?" "We'll be ready for them." Chen activated a tactical display showing the modifications being made to Coalition space. "We're setting up bacterial dispersal networks. Throughout your territory, psychological warfare broadcasting stations, gravitational minefields. When the Kreks come looking for revenge, they're going to find a very different kind of war than they're used to. And after that? Chen's expression grew distant. After that, we make sure they never threaten anyone again. Ever. The finality in her voice sent chills down Veltar's spine. You're talking about genocide. I'm talking about pest control. Chen's winter storm eyes focused on Veltar again. The Kreks are cancer. They consume everything they touch and leave nothing behind but empty husks. You don't negotiate with cancer. You don't try to rehabilitate it. You cut it out completely. They're still a sentient species. Are they? Webb looked up from his workstation. We've been studying their collective consciousness for weeks. Want to know what we found? Individual Kreks drones have no independent thought, no personal desires, no individual identity. They're biological robots controlled by a central processing network. Santos nodded. The hive mind is sentient, but the individual drones aren't any more aware than your fingernails. Killing a Kreks drone is like cutting your hair. The central organism might notice, but the individual piece doesn't suffer. But the collective consciousness is a parasite that consumes other species' consciousness, Chen finished. Every time the Kreks absorb someone, that person's individuality dies and becomes part of the collective. The hive mind isn't just sentient, it's made up of the stolen sentience of billions of victims. Veltar sat down heavily on a cargo crate. The moral landscape she thought she understood had been completely rewritten. The humans weren't just brutal savages. They were pragmatic surgeons, cutting away a diseased part of the galaxy with ruthless efficiency. How many ships like the Retribution does Earth have? She asked. Dozens, Chen said. Ships crewed by people too dangerous for regular society but too valuable to waste. Pirates who hunt pirates. Soldiers who fight wars that regular military can't touch. Scientists who study things that would drive normal researchers insane. And they all volunteer for this? Most of us don't have anywhere else to go, Webb said quietly. Regular society doesn't know what to do with people like us. We're too violent for civilian life, too unstable for regular military service. But we're perfect for jobs like this. Chen walked to the viewport and looked out at the debris field. Every person on this ship volunteered for what we assumed would be a suicide mission. We had no backup, no support fleet, no guarantee of survival. We came because someone asked for help, and humans don't ignore distress calls. Even from strangers? Even from species you'd never met? Especially from strangers. Chen's reflection in the viewport looked tired. It's easy to help people, you know. It takes something else to help people you've never met, who can't offer you anything in return. Veltar thought about that for a long time. The humans had traveled across the galaxy to fight a war they couldn't win, for people they didn't know, asking for nothing in return. They had violated every principle of civilized warfare and committed acts that would haunt them forever, all to protect strangers. Captain, she said finally, what do you need from the Coalition? Space to work, time to prepare, and the understanding that when this is over, the galaxy is going to be a different place. Chen turned away from the viewport. The Kreks thought they were the apex predators. They were wrong, but now everyone else is going to know what actual apex predators look like. Outside the Retribution, Coalition ships moved through the debris field, beginning the long process of cleanup. But Veltar knew that no amount of cleaning would erase what had happened here. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of when, pushed to the edge. She just hoped they would never be pushed that far again. 6 months had passed since the destruction of the Kreks advance fleet, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened at Zephyr 7. Ambassador Veltar stood in her new office on Earth's orbital station above the planet's blue, marble surface, reading reports that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The Zephyrian Coalition had not just survived, they had thrived. Their worlds were rebuilding faster than anyone had predicted, protected by a network of human-designed defenses that made invasion virtually impossible. But more importantly, they were no longer alone. The galaxy's perception of the Coalition had changed overnight from doomed refugees to species under human protection. That protection came with implications that Veltar was still learning to navigate. The Altarian Empire has requested a formal meeting, her aide, Scholar Zixtal, reported. They want to discuss mutual defense agreements. Veltar almost laughed. 6 months ago, the Altarians had closed their borders rather than risk helping the Coalition. Now they wanted to ally with the species that had somehow convinced humans to fight their wars. What about the Nexus Confederation? They've offered to return all the cultural artifacts they preserved from Coalition worlds, free of charge. They're also requesting permission to establish an embassy in Coalition space. And the Galactic Council? Zixtal's expression grew complicated. They've officially recognized the Coalition's right to employ non-traditional security contractors. It's their way of acknowledging the human presence without actually saying the word human in official documents. Veltar walked to the window that looked down on Earth's surface. From orbit, the planet looked deceptively peaceful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. Nothing in the view suggested that this was a Class 12 death world that had produced the most dangerous species in the galaxy. But if you knew what to look for, you could see the signs. Cities that sprawled across entire continents, connected by transport networks that could move armies in hours. Industrial complexes that could build warships faster than most species could design them. And scattered across the planet's surface, training facilities where humans learned to fight wars that other species couldn't imagine. Any word from Captain Chen? Veltar asked. The Retribution departed yesterday for the Outer Rim. Intelligence reports suggest Krek's survivors have been gathering there, trying to rebuild their fleet. Zixtal paused. Captain Chen's final message was brief, cleaning up the remaining infestation. Veltar shivered. She had grown to respect Sarah Chen over the past months, but the humans' casual attitude toward genocide still disturbed her. Chen spoke about exterminating the Kreks the way most people discussed pest control. Necessary, efficient, and completely without emotional weight. The door to her office chimed, and Admiral Marcus Webb entered. The massive human looked strange. In the diplomatic uniform Earth had provided, his scarred hands folded behind his back in a gesture that was probably meant to look peaceful, but somehow managed to appear threatening instead. "Ambassador," he said in his grinding stone voice, "I have the monthly security briefing." Webb had been assigned as Earth's military liaison to the Coalition, which was a polite way of saying he was their permanent bodyguard. The human government had made it clear that anyone who threatened the Coalition would have to answer to people like Webb. "What's the situation?" Veltar asked. "Quiet. Too quiet." Webb activated a holographic display showing the local galactic region. Pirate activity has dropped by 90% in Coalition space. Raiding fleets are avoiding your territory completely. Even the minor conflicts between neighboring species have cooled down. That sounds like good news. It is, but it's also artificial. Everyone's being peaceful because they're afraid of what happens if they're not. Webb highlighted several star systems on the display. These regions used to see regular conflicts. Now they're negotiating instead of fighting, because nobody wants to be the next species that requires human intervention. Veltar studied the display. Peace imposed by fear wasn't really peace at all. It was just violence waiting to happen. "Are we doing the right thing?" she asked quietly. Webb was silent for a long moment. "Define right. Are we saving lives? Yes. Are we preventing wars? Yes. Are we forcing the galaxy to behave better through the implicit threat of overwhelming violence? Also yes. But is that justice? Justice is a luxury for species that have other options." Webb's scarred face showed no emotion. 6 months ago, your people were facing extinction. Today they're safe and rebuilding. If that's not justice, it's at least survival. Veltar's communication console chimed with an incoming priority message. The holographic display showed Captain Chen's face, broadcast from somewhere in the outer rim. The human looked tired, but satisfied. "Ambassador," Chen said without preamble, "the cleanup operation is complete. The remaining Krex fleet has been neutralized. The species is now functionally extinct." Veltar felt a chill. All of them? Every ship, every drone, every fragment of the collective consciousness. We tracked down the survivors from Zephyr 7 and found their rallying point. They were trying to rebuild their forces using biological samples from previous conquests. Chen's expression never changed. "We made sure they won't be trying again." "How many?" "Approximately 2 million drones across 50 bioships. They never saw us coming." Chen paused. "The Krex swarm is officially extinct as of 1400 hours, standard galactic time." Veltar sat down heavily. 2 million beings, wiped out by a single human ship. The mathematics of destruction were staggering. "Captain," Webb said, "what's your next assignment?" "Patrol duty along the contested frontier. Intelligence suggests there's a rogue AI fleet that's been raiding isolated colonies. Command wants us to investigate." Chen's smile was sharp. "Should be fun." After the transmission ended, Veltar sat in silence for several minutes. Webb waited patiently, his massive frame still as stone. "How many ships like the Retribution are out there?" she finally asked. "Classified, but enough." Webb activated another display, this one showing human ship movements throughout the galaxy. "Patrol vessels, research ships, merchant vessels that carry enough firepower to level small moons. We're everywhere, and we're watching everything. You're policing the galaxy. We're protecting our interests. The Coalition is under human protection now. That makes your enemies our enemies, your threats our threats." Webb's expression was as emotionless as always. The galaxy is learning to be more careful about who it threatens. Veltar thought about the reports she'd been reading. Pirate fleets disbanding rather than risk operating near Coalition space. Aggressive species negotiating peaceful settlements instead of going to war. The galactic community walking softly around anything that might attract human attention. "This can't last," she said. "Eventually, someone is going to challenge you. Someone is going to test whether humans are really as dangerous as everyone thinks. Probably." Webb seemed unconcerned. "When that happens, we'll remind them why the Krex are extinct." "And what about us? What about the Coalition? Are we truly allies, or are we just pets you're protecting?" Webb considered the question seriously. "Allies, but allies of a species that doesn't make friends the way other species do. Humans form pack bonds. Once you're part of our pack, we'll die before we let anything happen to you. But that protection comes with expectations." "What kind of expectations?" "Loyalty, trust, the understanding that when we ask you to do something, it's because the alternative is worse." Webb's scarred hands moved to rest on the table. "The Coalition is free to make its own decisions, choose its own path. But if those choices threaten human interests or put our people at risk, we'll intervene. And if we want to end the alliance, you can't." Webb's statement was simple and final. "You've seen what we're capable of. You know our methods, our technology, our strategic thinking. Even if we wanted to let you go, we couldn't risk that information falling into the wrong hands." Veltar felt a chill of understanding. The Coalition wasn't just protected by humans. They were bound to them, permanently and irrevocably. They had traded the threat of extinction for the security of permanent oversight. "Are you saying we're prisoners?" "I'm saying your family. Difficult, complicated, sometimes dangerous family, but family nonetheless." Webb stood to leave. "The difference is that prisoners want to escape. Family wants to survive together." After he left, Veltar stood at the window again, watching Earth turn slowly beneath the orbital station. Somewhere down there, humans were training for wars that hadn't started yet, building weapons for enemies they hadn't met, preparing for threats that existed only in worst-case scenarios. Her communication console chimed again, this time with a message from Coalition Space. A new distress call had been received. A small mining colony in an isolated system under attack by unknown raiders. The message was brief and desperate. "Please help us. We don't have anywhere else to turn." Veltar looked at the message for a long time, then activated her response channel. Message received and forwarded to human patrol forces. Assistance is en route. Hang on, help is coming. She closed the channel and smiled slightly. 6 months. Ego, receiving that message would have filled her with despair. Another tragedy she was powerless to prevent. Now it was just another problem that would be solved with overwhelming human violence. The galaxy had learned an important lesson in the ruins of the Krex swarm. There were worse things than being afraid of humans. There was being the kind of species that made humans decide you needed to be stopped. Outside the window, Earth continued. Its slow rotation, a blue marble hiding the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever produced. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, ships like the Retribution patrolled the void, carrying their dangerous cargo of hope to desperate corners of the galaxy. The age of human protection had begun. For better or worse, the galaxy would never be the same.
Commander ZFKA looked at the data screen and felt nothing but boredom. Another routine scan of the human homeworld. Another report that would say the same thing as the last 1,000 reports. The humans were still on their tiny blue planet. They were still weak. They were still not worth worrying about. He pressed a few buttons on his console. The long-range sensors swept across the Earth system. Everything looked normal. The third planet from the star showed the usual signs of primitive life. Radio signals, heat signatures from their cities, a few small space stations orbiting their world. Nothing that would threaten the Great Galactic Council. ZFKA had been watching Earth for 20 years. His father had watched it before him. His grandfather, too. It was a family job that passed down through generations. Watch the humans. Make sure they stay where they belong. Report if anything changes. Nothing ever changed. The humans had discovered fire only a few thousand years ago. They had built their first flying machines just over a century ago. They had barely managed to put a few of their kind on their own moon. At this rate, it would take them thousands of years to become a real spacefaring race. By then, the Council would have decided what to do with them. ZFKA finished his scan and started to write his report. The same words he used every month. Human activity remains minimal. No signs of advanced technology. No threat to Council interests. Recommend continued monitoring with current resources. He sent the report and leaned back in his chair. Another boring day watching the most boring species in the galaxy. What ZFKA did not know was that 300 light-years away, deep inside what appeared to be a dead rock of a planet, millions of humans were working in the largest construction project their species had ever attempted. The planet was called Kepler 442b in the old star charts. The Council had surveyed it 200 years ago and marked it as uninhabitable waste. No atmosphere worth breathing. No water. No life. No reason for anyone to ever go there again. This was exactly what humanity had been hoping for. Sarah Chen walked through the massive corridor carved deep into the planet's core. The tunnel was so large that aircraft could fly through it. The walls were lined with metal that gleamed under the artificial lights. She could hear the sound of construction echoing from every direction. Hammering, welding, the hum of massive machines. She had been born here, like her parents before her. Her great-great-grandmother had been part of the first team to arrive on this world. Back then, it had taken 6 months to hollow out a space big enough for 1,000 people. Now, 3 centuries later, the entire planet was hollow, a shell of rock hiding the greatest secret in human history. Sarah stopped at an observation window and looked out into the central construction bay. The sight never failed to amaze her. The space was so vast that weather patterns formed inside it. Clouds drifted between the massive metal structures. Lightning flashed in the distance where the power systems were being tested. And there, in the center of it all, was a reason for everything. The engine. It was the size of a city. A fusion reactor so powerful it could move an entire planet. The same type of engine that were being built in dozens of other hollow worlds scattered across the galaxy. All hidden, all secret, all part of humanity's greatest plan. Impressive, isn't it? A voice said behind her. Sarah turned to see Dr. Marcus Webb approaching. He was the chief engineer for this section of the project, a man in his 70s who had spent his entire life working on humanity's secret fleet. "It never gets old," Sarah replied. "How much longer until we're ready?" "The engine will be online in 6 months," Webb said. "The weapon systems are already installed. The navigation computers are running final tests. Way ahead of schedule." Sarah nodded. She knew that similar conversations were happening on every world in the fleet. Dozens of planets that looked dead and empty from the outside. Dozens of planets that were actually massive warships waiting for the signal to move. "Any word from Earth?" she asked. Webb's expression grew serious. "The Council is getting restless. Intelligence reports suggest they are planning something big. They think we're getting too crowded on Earth. Too many humans. Too much radio noise. They are starting to see us as a problem that needs solving." Sarah felt a chill. This was what they had all been preparing for. The reason their ancestors had started this project 300 years ago. Humanity had learned early that the galaxy was not a friendly place. The strong survived. The weak were eliminated. And the Council saw humans as very weak indeed. But the Council was wrong. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked. "Maybe a year. Maybe less. But it doesn't matter. We're ready. The whole fleet is ready. When they come for Earth, they are going to get the surprise of their lives." Webb walked to another window that showed the outer construction bays. Thousands of smaller ships were docked there. Fighters, bombers, transport vessels. All of them built inside the planet where no outside sensors could detect them. "You know what the best part is?" Webb said with a smile. "They've been watching us the whole time. ZFKA and his monitoring station. They think they know everything about humanity. They think we're just simple creatures playing with fire on our little world." He pointed to a display screen that showed the locations of all the Council monitoring posts. Red dots scattered around the galaxy, each one watching a human world that the Council thought was a normal colony. None of them realizing that every world they were watching was actually a disguised warship. They count our cities. They measure our energy output. They catalog our radio signals. And all the time, they are looking at the wrong thing. They are so busy watching our decoy operations that they never notice what's really happening. Sarah understood. For 3 centuries, humanity had been playing a game of misdirection on a galactic scale. Every piece of technology they showed the galaxy was deliberately primitive. Every space mission was designed to look clumsy and limited. Every colony world was made to appear barely self-sufficient. Meanwhile, the real human civilization was growing in secret, hidden inside dead planets, protected by technology that was centuries ahead of anything the Council possessed, preparing for the war that everyone knew was coming. The communication system crackled to life. A voice echoed through the construction bay. "Attention all personnel. This is Admiral Harrison broadcasting from Oath Command. We have received confirmation that Council forces are mobilizing for a cleansing operation. All worlds are to complete final preparations immediately. The Sleeper Protocol is now active. Repeat, the Sleeper Protocol is now active." Sarah and Webb looked at each other. After 300 years of waiting, the moment had finally come. Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds that the Council believed were dead rocks, millions of humans heard the same message. Engineers stopped their work to listen. Soldiers checked their weapons. Families gathered together knowing that everything was about to change. The galaxy thought it knew humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. Admiral Voth Prime stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and felt satisfaction flow through his body. Today would be a good day. Today, the Council would finally solve the human problem. The cleansing fleet stretched out before him in perfect formation. 500 warships. The largest military force the Council had assembled in over a century. Enough firepower to turn a planet into dust. All of it aimed at one small blue world that had grown too crowded for its own good. Status report, Vorth Prime commanded. His tactical officer, a young hegemony soldier named Kex-9, consulted his instruments. All ships report ready. Admiral, we are approaching the edge of the human system. Estimated arrival at the target planet in 6 hours. Excellent. And our intelligence reports. Unchanged, sir. The humans show no signs of advanced defense systems. No significant military installations detected beyond their orbital stations. Their largest warship appears to be approximately 200 meters in length. Primitive missile armaments only. Vorth Prime nodded. This would be even easier than he had thought. The humans had no idea what was coming. His fleet had traveled here through hyperspace, covering the distance from Council space in just 3 days. The humans would have no time to prepare any kind of defense. So, Kex-9 said, looking puzzled at his screen, I'm getting some unusual reading from their moon. What kind of readings? Energy signatures that don't match our previous scans. And the gravitational field seems different somehow. Vorth Prime walked over to examine the data himself. The human moon had always been a dead rock circling their planet. Nothing special about it. But the numbers on the screen were definitely wrong. Run a full-spectrum analysis, he ordered. I want to know what those primitives are doing up there. What Admiral Vorth Prime did not know was that Luna, Earth's moon, had not been in orbit around Earth for over 50 years. The object his sensors were detecting was something else entirely. Something that had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. Deep inside what appeared to be the moon, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in the command center of humanity's first planet ship, Sanctuary. Around her, thousands of technicians worked at control stations that stretched as far as the eye could see. The chamber was so large that it had its own weather system, with clouds forming near the ceiling. Admiral Vorth Prime's fleet has entered sensor range, reported her communications officer. 500 ships, just as intelligence predicted. Elena smiled grimly. Right on schedule. How long until they reach optimal firing position? 17 minutes. Captain. Good. Signal all stations. Begin final power-up sequence. Drop the holographic camouflage on my mark. Elena had been born for this moment. Her entire family had served on Sanctuary for 4 generations. Her great-grandfather had helped design the massive fusion reactors that powered the ship. Her grandmother had supervised the installation of the main weapon arrays. Her mother had commanded the final construction phases. Now it was Elena's turn to make history. She walked to the central observation deck and looked up at the massive display screen that showed the space around Earth. The Hegemony fleet was approaching in their standard attack formation, confident, arrogant, completely unprepared for what was about to happen. All weapon systems report ready, announced a tactical officer, Commander Park. Primary cannons are charged to full power. Secondary batteries are online. Point defense grids are active. Elena nodded. Sanctuary was more than just a disguised moon. It was the most powerful warship ever built by any species in the galaxy. Its main cannons were the size of city blocks. Its armor was thicker than the deepest ocean trenches on Earth. Its shields could withstand the energy output of a small star. And the Hegemony had no idea it existed. Captain, Park continued, we're receiving similar ready signals from the other ships in the fleet. Elena's smile widened. The Hegemony thought they were attacking a single primitive world. They had no idea that dozens of planet ships were hidden throughout the galaxy, all waiting for the signal, all ready to reveal humanity's true power. Open a channel to Earth Command, Elena ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the face of Admiral Harrison, the supreme commander of all human forces. He was sitting in his office on Earth, looking remarkably calm for someone whose planet was about to be attacked by the largest alien fleet in recorded history. Captain Rodriguez, Harrison said, are you ready to make our debut? All systems green, Admiral. Sanctuary is ready to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. Excellent. You have permission to drop camouflage and engage at will. Show them what 300 years of preparation looks like. The transmission ended. Elena turned to her crew. Every face was focused. Every hand was steady. They had trained for this their entire lives. Their parents had trained for it. Their grandparents had trained for it. All stations. This is the captain, Elena announced over the ship-wide communication system. Today we stop pretending to be weak. Today we show the galaxy that humanity is not prey. Drop holographic camouflage in 3, 2, 1, mark. Across the space around Earth, what had appeared to be the moon suddenly began to change. The familiar gray surface started to shimmer and fade like a mirage. Massive sections of what had looked like crater-covered rock split open to reveal gleaming metal underneath. Gun ports that had been hidden for decades swung open. Sensor arrays that could track a single ship across a star system extended from concealed bays. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, alarms began screaming. "Admiral!" Kex-9 shouted over the noise. "The moon, it's not a moon." Voth Prime stared at his main screen in disbelief. Where the human moon had been just moments before, there was now a massive structure unlike anything he had ever seen. It was spherical, like a moon, but covered in weapons that made his flagship's armaments look like toys. "What is that thing?" he whispered. His question was answered a few seconds later when Sanctuary fired its first shot. The main cannon, a weapon that stretched from one side of the ship to the other, charged with enough energy to power a small civilization. When it fired, the beam was visible to the naked eye across the entire solar system. It cut through space like a sword made of pure light. The beam struck the Eternal Dominion dead center. Voth Prime had just enough time to understand that everything he thought he knew about humanity had been wrong. Then his ship, a kilometer-long dreadnought that had conquered 12 worlds, simply ceased to exist. The other ships in the Hegemony fleet watched in horror as their flagship was vaporized in a single shot. No explosion. No debris. One moment it was there. The next moment there was only empty space and a fading glow. All ships. Voth Prime second in command screamed over the fleet communication system. "Emergency retreat. Emergency retreat." But it was too late for retreating. As the Hegemony ships tried to turn away from Oath, more sections of Sanctuary opened fire. Weapons that had been hidden for decades revealed themselves. Missile bays launched swarms of projectiles that moved faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. Energy beams crisscrossed space like a deadly light show. In less than 10 minutes, the largest military fleet in Council history was reduced to burning wreckage. Elena watched the destruction from her command center and felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. This was just the beginning. The galaxy had tried to destroy humanity. Now humanity would show them the price of that mistake. "Signal Earth Command," she ordered. "Phase 1 is complete. The galaxy now knows we exist. Initiate Phase 2. Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds that the Council had catalogued as dead rocks, the same message was received. Planets that had been silent for centuries suddenly came alive with activity. Engines the size of continents began to power up. Weapons that could crack moons prepared for war. The Hegemony had wanted to eliminate humanity. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. The age of human deception was over. The age of human dominance was about to begin. High Chancellor Vexmore of the Galactic Council sat in his floating chair and stared at the emergency reports flooding his communication center. His 3 eyes blinked rapidly as he tried to process what he was reading. The numbers made no sense. The tactical analysis made no sense. Nothing made sense anymore. The cleansing fleet was gone. All 500 ships. Destroyed in less than 10 minutes by what appeared to be a single human weapon disguised as their moon. The few escape pods that had managed to transmit data before being destroyed told an impossible story. The humans had built a warship the size of a planet. They had hidden it in plain sight for decades. They had weapons that could vaporize a dreadnought with one shot. "This cannot be correct," Vexmore said to his aide, a nervous young council member named Tech-7. "Run the analysis again. Check for transmission errors. Check for equipment malfunctions. Check for anything that would explain how a primitive species could destroy our most powerful fleet." Tech-7's hand shook as he worked his controls. "I have run the analysis 17 times. High Chancellor, the results are consistent. The human weapon output exceeded our most optimistic estimates by a factor of 1,000. The energy signature suggests fusion technology far beyond anything we have seen before." Vexmore felt something he had not experienced in over 200 years of life. Fear. Real, cold fear that started in his stomach and spread through his entire body. If the humans could build one weapon like this, how many more did they have? How long had they been planning this? How much did they really know about Council operations? His questions were answered sooner than he expected. The main communication array began broadcasting an incoming signal, not from anywhere in Council space, not from any known civilization. The signal was coming from a dead system on the outer rim, a system that contained nothing but worthless rocks that no one had bothered to visit in over a century. Put it on the main screen, Vexmore ordered. The holographic display activated and showed the face of a human, a middle-aged woman with short gray hair and calm, intelligent eyes. She was wearing what appeared to be a military uniform of some kind. "Greetings, High Chancellor Vexmore," the woman said in perfect Council standard language. "My name is Admiral Sarah Harrison, Supreme Commander of the Human Colonial Defense Force. I believe we need to talk." Vexmore's third eye widened in shock. The humans knew his name. They knew his rank. They were broadcasting from a dead system. And this Admiral Harrison was speaking as if she represented not just Earth, but multiple human colonies. "Admiral Harrison," Vexmore replied, trying to keep his voice steady, "I was not aware that humanity had established any colonies outside your home system." Admiral Harrison smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "High Chancellor, there are many things about humanity that your council has not been aware of. That is exactly what I wanted to discuss with you." The transmission shifted to show a wider view. Admiral Harrison was standing in what appeared to be a command center, but the scale was all wrong. The room stretched away in all directions, disappearing into the distance. Thousands of technicians worked at control stations. The ceiling was so high that it vanished in shadow. "Where are you?" Vexmore asked. "I am currently aboard the planet ship New Horizon, located in what your star charts list as a Kepler 442 system. You surveyed this system 200 years ago and marked it as uninhabitable. We have been using it as a construction facility ever since." Vexmore felt his breathing stop. The Kepler system. He remembered that survey. A dead world with no atmosphere and no resources worth harvesting. The Council had written it off completely. Construction facility for what? He asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "For this," Admiral Harrison said. The view changed again. This time it showed space outside the ship. What Vexmore saw made his worst fears seem small and insignificant. Floating in the darkness was what appeared to be a planet, but it was moving. Massive engines, each one the size of a continent, glowed with fusion fire. The surface was covered with structures that could only be weapons, gun ports that looked like valleys, missile silos that looked like mountain ranges. New Horizon is just one of 43 planet ships currently operational, Admiral Harrison continued. We have been building them for 3 centuries. Every world your council marked as dead or worthless became a construction site. Every system you ignored became a human stronghold. 43. Vexmore's mind struggled to comprehend the number. 43 weapons like the one that had destroyed the cleansing fleet. 43 planets converted into warships. 43 hidden bases that the Council had never detected. "How?" was all he managed to say. "Very carefully, High Chancellor. Your monitoring stations have been watching our decoy operation for 200 years. Every piece of technology we showed you was deliberately primitive. Every space mission was designed to look clumsy. Every colony was made to appear barely functional. Meanwhile, our real civilization was growing in secret." The view shifted again to show star charts. Dozens of systems were highlighted in blue. Systems that the Council databases listed as empty or unimportant. All of them, according to the display, containing human planet ships. "The Council has been playing a game," Admiral Harrison said. "Watching primitive species. Deciding which ones to eliminate when they become inconvenient. But humanity has been playing a different game. We have been preparing for the day when you would come for us." Vexmore realized that everything he thought he knew about galactic politics had just changed. The humans were not a primitive species waiting to be eliminated. They were a hidden empire that had been growing under the Council's nose for centuries. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want to show you something else," Admiral Harrison replied. The transmission now showed a tactical display of the galaxy. Hundreds of systems were marked with different colored symbols. Blue for human planet ships. Red for Council military bases, green for major trade routes, yellow for communication relay stations. "Your cleansing fleet was not the only Council operation launched today," Admiral Harrison said. We have been monitoring your communications for decades. We know about the 3 other fleets you sent to eliminate problematic species in the Outer Rim. Vexmore felt his blood turn cold. Those were classified operations, top-secret missions that only the highest levels of the Council knew about. Those fleets no longer exist, Admiral Harrison continued. They encountered our planet ships approximately 1 hour ago. Just like your fleet at Earth, they have been completely destroyed. The tactical display updated to show the locations of the destroyed fleets, 4 different systems, 4 separate battles, all resulting in total Council losses. Impossible, Vexmore whispered. You could not have known our battle plans. You could not have positioned forces to intercept every fleet. High Chancellor, we have been inside your communication network for over 50 years. We know every plan you make before your own admirals do. We have ships positioned in every system that matters. When you decided to eliminate humanity, you walked into a trap that we have been preparing for longer than most of your soldiers have been alive. Admiral Harrison's image moved closer to the camera. Her expression was serious but not hostile. Now, High Chancellor, I have a proposal for you. Your council can continue trying to eliminate species you consider inferior, but understand that humanity will be watching, and humanity will respond. Or you can accept that the balance of power in this galaxy has changed. You can negotiate with us as equals instead of trying to exterminate us as pests. Vexmore sat in silence for several minutes. Everything he had believed about the galaxy was wrong. Every assumption the Council had made about humanity was false. The species they had thought of as primitive insects had been playing a game far more sophisticated than anything the Council had imagined. "What are your terms?" he finally asked. Admiral Harrison smiled again. This time it looked more genuine. "I am transmitting a formal diplomatic proposal to your council chambers now," she said. "I suggest you read it carefully. And High Chancellor, you might want to update your star charts. Humanity controls a lot more territory than your records indicate." The transmission ended, leaving Vexmore alone with the terrible knowledge that the galaxy would never be the same again. Fleet Admiral Korthrex of the Hegemony Empire received the emergency orders while his battle group was refueling at the fortress world of Drachmae Prime. The message was simple and direct. All available forces were to retreat immediately to the core worlds. The humans had revealed themselves to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Korthrex read the orders 3 times before he could believe them. According to the reports, the primitive from Earth had destroyed 4 separate council fleets using weapons of impossible power. They had planet-sized warships. They had been hiding in dead systems for centuries. They were now hunting down every military force that had participated in elimination operations. "Impossible," he muttered to his tactical officer, Commander Yef Prime. "These reports must be exaggerated. No species could hide technology like this for so long." Yef Prime looked uncomfortable. "So, the reports are coming from 17 different sources. All of them describe the same thing. Planets that move like ships. Weapons that can destroy dreadnoughts with single shots. The humans appear to have built an entire hidden fleet." Korthrex stood up and walked to the main display screen that showed his battle group. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 battleships, 2 carrier vessels with full fighter squadrons. It was enough firepower to conquer most star systems. Surely it was enough to handle whatever primitive weapons the humans had managed to build. "Set course for the core worlds," he ordered reluctantly, "but keep all sensors active. If we encounter any human forces, we will show them what real military power looks like." What Admiral Korthrex did not know was that humanity had been tracking his battle group for over 6 months. The planet ship Iron will have been waiting in the Drachmore system for 2 weeks, hidden behind the system's gas giant, completely invisible to hegemony sensors. Captain James Morrison stood in the command center of Ironwill and watched the hegemony ships begin their retreat. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. No one spoke unless necessary. Everyone understood what was about to happen. "Tactical report," Morrison requested. "Hegemony Battle Group consists of 18 vessels. Reported as Weapons Officer, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park. Standard formation. They are accelerating toward the hyperspace jump point. Estimated time to jump, 14 minutes. Morrison nodded. 14 minutes was more than enough time. Ironwill was not just a planet ship. It was a mobile fortress that contained an entire civilization, cities with millions of inhabitants, factories that could build fleets of smaller ships, and weapons that made the hegemony's best technology look like ancient history. "Begin approach," Morrison ordered. "Drop cloak when we reach optimal firing position." The planet ship began to move. Despite its enormous size, Ironwood could accelerate faster than most conventional starships. Its fusion engines were so powerful they could be seen from neighboring star systems. But right now, those engines were running in stealth mode, producing no detectable signatures. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Korthrex was reviewing the retreat route when his sensor operator suddenly went pale. "Admiral," the operator said in a shaking voice, "I am detecting a massive gravity distortion approaching our position." "What kind of distortion?" "So, it appears to be a planet, but it is moving at high speed and is not following any natural orbital pattern." Korthrex rushed to the sensor station and looked at the readings himself. The numbers made no sense. The computer was showing an object with the mass of a small planet, but it was accelerating like a starship. It was also radiating energy signatures that his equipment could not identify. "Where did it come from?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. It simply appeared on our sensors 30 seconds ago. But based on its current trajectory, it was hidden behind the gas giant." Korthrex felt cold fear creeping up his spine. A planet that could hide. A planet that could move like a ship. The reports about human technology were true. "All ships," he shouted into his communication system. "Emergency jump. Emergency jump. Execute hyperspace transition immediately." But it was too late. Ironwood dropped its cloaking system and revealed itself to the hegemony fleet. The planet ship was a sphere of metal and stone 3 times larger than Earth's moon. Its surface was covered with cities that glowed like stars, weapon installations that looked like mountain ranges, docking bays that could hold fleets of smaller ships. The sight was so overwhelming that several hegemony officers simply stared in shock, unable to process what they were seeing. Admiral Korthrex was not one of them. He immediately understood that his battle group stood no chance against whatever this thing was. But he was a military officer. He had sworn an oath to fight for the Empire, even if it meant certain death. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "Concentrate fire on the largest weapon installations. If we are going to die, we will die fighting." The hegemony ships turned toward Ironwill and began firing every weapon they had. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams lanced out from their heavy cannons. Fighter squadrons launched from the carrier vessels and dove toward the planet ship like angry insects. For a few moments, the space around Ironwood was filled with explosions and weapon fire. It looked like a real battle was taking place. Then the planet ship began to respond. The first thing that happened was that all the hegemony missiles simply disappeared. Point defense systems that covered the entire surface of Ironwood tracked and destroyed every incoming projectile before it could get within 1,000 kilometers of the ship. The defensive fire was so dense that it looked like a solid wall of light. The second thing that happened was that the fighter squadrons discovered they could not maneuver. Some kind of gravity field was pulling their ships toward the planet ship. No matter how hard they fired their engines, they could not break free. One by one, the fighters were drawn into docking bays that opened like giant mouths to swallow them. The third thing that happened was that Ironwood began to return fire. The planet ship's main weapons were built into artificial mountain ranges that covered half its surface. When they fired, the energy beams were so bright they could be seen from the next star system. Each shot carried more destructive power than entire hegemony fleets possessed. Admiral Korthrex watched his flagship shield collapse under the first hit. The second hit cut his ship in half. The third hit vaporized what was left. He had just enough time to realize that humanity had been holding back during their previous battles. The destruction of the cleansing fleet had been a demonstration, not a real fight. This was what happened when humans decided to show their true strength. The entire battle lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, 18 hegemony warships had been reduced to expanding clouds of glowing debris. Not a single human had been killed. Not a single system on Ironwood had been damaged. Captain Morrison watched the destruction from his command center and felt no satisfaction. This was not a victory. It was pest control. The hegemony forces had been so outmatched that calling it a battle would be insulting to both sides. Signal Earth Command, he ordered. Battle Group 7 has been eliminated. No survivors. Iron Will is proceeding to the next target. Around the galaxy, similar messages were being sent from dozens of other planet ships. The Hegemony Empire had over 200 military bases scattered across 50 star systems. Humanity was systematically visiting each one and demonstrating the futility of resistance. But this was not random destruction. This was psychological warfare on a galactic scale. Every battle was being broadcast on open frequencies so that other species could see what happened to those who threatened humanity. Every engagement was designed to show that human technology was centuries ahead of anything else in the galaxy. The message was simple and clear. Humanity was no longer hiding. They were no longer pretending to be weak. And they were no longer interested in being left alone. The galaxy had tried to eliminate them. Now they were going to reshape the galaxy according to their own vision. Fleet Admiral Korthrex had been wrong about one thing. The humans were not using primitive weapons. They were using weapons so advanced that the rest of the galaxy might as well have been fighting with sticks and stones. The age of Council dominance was ending. The age of human supremacy had begun. High Chancellor Vexmore stood in the great assembly hall of the Galactic Council and looked out at the faces of representatives from across the galaxy. Never before had he seen such fear in the eyes of so many powerful beings. Species that had ruled star systems for thousands of years now sat quietly in their chairs, waiting to hear what humanity wanted from them. It had been 6 months since the humans revealed their true power. 6 months since their planet ships had systematically destroyed every military force that opposed them. 6 months since the galaxy learned that the species they had dismissed as primitive had been the most advanced civilization in known space for centuries. The numbers were staggering. In those 6 months, humanity had destroyed over 3,000 Council warships without losing a single planet ship. They had forced the surrender of 4 to 7 military bases. They had blockaded 12 major trade routes. And they had done it all while broadcasting every engagement on open frequencies so the entire galaxy could watch. The message had been received. Humanity was now the dominant military power in the galaxy, and today they were coming to collect what they were owed. The main doors of the assembly hall opened with a deep rumbling sound. Admiral Sarah Harrison walked in, followed by a small group of human diplomats. She moved with quiet confidence, showing no sign of being impressed by the grandeur of the council chambers. Behind her walked representatives from dozens of human colony worlds that the council had never known existed. Admiral Harrison approached the central speaking platform and looked up at the assembled delegates. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly to every corner of the vast hall. "Honored delegates," she began, "I come before you today not as a conqueror, but as a representative of a species that wants to build a better future for everyone in this galaxy." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many delegates had expected demands for surrender or threats of destruction. Instead, Admiral Harrison was talking about cooperation. "For 3 centuries, humanity has watched this council operate," she continued. "We have seen how you decide which species live and which species die. We have observed your elimination campaigns against civilizations you consider inconvenient. We have monitored your debates about which worlds desire protection and which worlds can be sacrificed for political convenience." The murmurs stopped. Every delegate knew exactly what she was talking about. The Council's history was filled with decisions to eliminate or relocate species that stood in the way of more powerful civilizations. "Humanity rejects this system," Admiral Harrison said firmly. "We reject the idea that might makes right. We reject the notion that advanced species have the authority to eliminate primitive ones. And we reject any government that makes such decisions." High Chancellor Vexmore stood up from his floating throne. "Admiral Harrison, what exactly are you proposing?" "I am proposing a new set of rules for this galaxy," she replied. "Rules that every species will follow, regardless of their technology level or military power." She gestured to one of her diplomats, who activated a holographic display in the center of the hall. The display showed a detailed document with hundreds of pages of text. "The Human Colonial Charter," Admiral Harrison announced. "A set of principles that will govern all interactions between spacefaring civilizations. No species may eliminate another species for any reason. No species may claim territory that is already inhabited. No species may interfere with the natural development of primitive civilizations. And every species has a right to exist and grow without fear of extermination. The assembly hall erupted in angry voices. Delegates from the major powers shouted protests. Several representatives stood up and began speaking at the same time. The hegemony ambassador, a large reptilian creature named Zorth-Ka, slammed his fist on his desk. "This is unacceptable." Zorth-Ka roared. "You cannot simply impose your values on the entire galaxy. The strong have always ruled the weak. This is a natural order." Admiral Harrison waited for the noise to die down before responding. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried an undertone of absolute authority. "Ambassador Zorth-Ka, your empire controlled over 200 star systems last year. How many do you control today?" Zorth-Ka's anger faltered. Everyone in the hall knew the answer. The hegemony empire had been reduced to less than 50 systems after humanity's systematic destruction of their military forces. "The natural order has changed," Admiral Harrison continued. "Humanity is now the strongest military power in this galaxy. We could eliminate every government represented in this room and rule through force, just as you have done for millennia. But we choose not to. Instead, we offer you a chance to build something better." She walked closer to the delegates, making eye contact with several of them. "The Charter is not a suggestion. It is the law that will govern this galaxy from now on. Every species that wishes to participate in interstellar trade, communication, or travel will follow these rules. Those who refuse will find themselves isolated from the rest of galactic civilization." High Chancellor Vexmore floated down from his throne and approached Admiral Harrison. "And if we agree to these terms, what assurance do we have that humanity will not simply become the new oppressor?" Admiral Harrison smiled. "Because we are not interested in ruling over other species, High Chancellor. We are interested in making sure that no species ever again faces a choice between submission and extinction." She pointed to the holographic display, which now showed a new organizational chart. Under the Charter, the Galactic Council will be reorganized. Every spacefaring species will have equal representation, regardless of their military strength or technological advancement. Decisions will be made by majority vote, with special protections for minority rights. And most importantly, humanity will have no more power in this system than any other single species. This caused another wave of surprised murmurs. The delegates had expected humanity to demand control of the Council. However, Admiral Harrison continued, and her voice became harder. "Humanity will serve as the enforcement arm of this new system. Our planet ships will patrol the galaxy to ensure that the Charter is followed. Any species that attempts to eliminate another, any government that tries to return to the old ways of conquest and extermination, will face the full power of the human colonial defense force." She paused to let this sink in. "Think of us as a galaxy's police force. We have no interest in ruling you, but we will stop you from ruling others through violence." The assembly hall fell silent as the delegates considered this proposal. It was unlike anything they had expected. Humanity was offering to share power while keeping the military strength to enforce the new rules. Ambassador Tech 7 of the Outer Rim Territories was the first to speak. "Admiral Harrison, how do we know you will keep your word? How do we know that humanity will not eventually use its military advantage to impose its will on the rest of us?" Admiral Harrison nodded. "A fair question, Ambassador. The answer is simple. We have spent 300 years proving that we keep our promises. Every human colony world that appears on your updated star charts has been operating peacefully for decades or centuries. We could have revealed ourselves and conquered the galaxy at any time in the past 50 years. Instead, we chose to remain hidden until you forced our hand." She gestured to her diplomatic team. "These representatives come from 4 to 7 different human worlds. Some have been independent for over 2 centuries. Yet they all agreed to work together when faced with the threat of council elimination campaigns. Humanity's strength comes not from conquest, but from cooperation." High Chancellor Vexmore looked around the assembly hall at his fellow delegates. He could see the calculation in their eyes. The old system was broken. The Council's military forces had proven inadequate against human technology, and the humans were offering a path forward that did not require total surrender. "Admiral Harrison," he said finally, "the Council will need time to review your charter and discuss these proposals among ourselves." "Of course," Admiral Harrison replied. "You have exactly 30 standard days to make your decision. After that time, humanity will begin implementing the Charter with or without your formal agreement. Species that choose to follow the new rules will be welcomed as partners. Those that do not will find themselves excluded from galactic civilization. She turned and began walking toward the exit, then stopped and looked back at the assembly. Oh, and High Chancellor, you might want to begin updating your military planning databases. Our planet ships are not the only surprise humanity has been preparing. We have been busy building a lot more than just weapons. Admiral Harrison left the assembly hall, followed by her diplomatic team. Behind her, the delegates sat in stunned silence, each of them trying to understand how completely their world had changed. The galaxy had a new sheriff, and for the first time in recorded history, that sheriff was more interested in justice than conquest.